All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back for the final part of Amy Tan's Two Kinds. We remember last time that Jingmei met with old Chang, this old man who was trying to teach her piano, but he was deaf, and she didn't really give it a fair go. Well, turns out that Jingmei's mother and old Chang had the brilliant idea of entering her into a talent show so she could showcase what she's learned. And the piece that was picked was a piece called The Pleading Child. Pleading Child. Authors generally don't put in titles of things or make allusions to other works unless it's something important. A pleading child. A child that's pleading. It kind of reminds me of Waverly Zhang at the beginning of Rules of the Game. Very loud, very impatient, very intense. And that's the piece that Jingmei had chosen along with old Chang to perform in the piano recital. Piano recital didn't go so well. At first, she was able to keep up, but when push came to shove and the song got faster and more intense, it didn't seem to really click with her. And there she was, in front of a stage of family, friends, and strangers. She kind of made an absolute fool of herself. She didn't give herself that chance to become a great piano prodigy. And it didn't really work out in her favor. As a matter of fact, after the recital, the Zhangs and Jingmei and her family got together and they kind of talked, and it said, "Lots of talented kids," Auntie Lindo said vaguely, smiling broadly. Big smile on her face. Big smile on her face. I wonder why. That was something else, my father said, and I wondered if he was referring to me in a humorous way, or whether he even remembered what I had done. Waverly looked at me and shrugged her shoulders. "You aren't a genius like me," she said matter-of-factly. "If I hadn't felt so bad, I would have pulled her braids and punched her stomach." Yeah, we got that little rivalry going on there. That little, ha-ha, I told you so, you're not like me. I see a different side of Waverly in this story now that it's told from a different perspective. But my mother's expression was what devastated me. A quiet, blank look that said she had lost everything. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, as we discussed in class, that quiet disappointment. Not a yell, not a scream, not a shout, but just quiet, that silent treatment. I felt the same way, and everyone seemed now to be coming up like gawkers at the scene of an accident to see what parts were actually missing. When he got back on the bus to go home, it says on the bus, he's talking about finances. My father was humming the Busy Bee tune and my mother kept silence. I love that. I mean, it's really devastating. Her father was humming the song that another child performed that wasn't her. He was more impressed with the other kids than his own daughter. I kept thinking she wanted to wait until we got home before shouting at me. But when my father unlocked the door to our apartment, my mother walked in and went straight to the back, into the bedroom. No accusations, no blame, and in a way I felt disappointed. I had been waiting for her to start shouting so that I could shout back and cry and blame her for all my misery. Doesn't that seem to be the case sometimes, that when we're let down, when we're hurt, when we're frustrated, we want to look to somebody else to blame them? Jingmei's mother didn't give her that opportunity. Jingmei knew that the only person that she had to blame was herself. I had assumed that the talent show fiasco meant that I would never have to play the piano again. I mean, that makes sense, right? You made a fool of yourself, you made a fool of your family, you dishonored your family's name, but 2 days later, after school, my mother came out of the kitchen and saw me watching TV. 4 o'clock, she reminded me, as if it were any other day. I was stunned, as though she were asking me to go through the talent show torture again. I planted myself more squarely in front of the TV. "Turn off TV," she called from the kitchen 5 minutes later. I didn't budge. And then I decided I didn't have to do what my mother said anymore. I wasn't her slave. This wasn't China. I had listened to her before, and look what happened. She was the stupid one. The note that I'm going to put here is, really? But then again, that's my note. Really? You listened to your mother? Kind of. She was the stupid one? I mean, I guess she was stupid for believing her daughter actually tried, but who was the one that was embarrassed at the talent show? She came out of the kitchen and stood in the arched entryway of the living room. 4 o'clock, she said once again louder. I'm not going to play anymore, I said nonchalantly. Why should I? I'm not a genius. She stood in front of the TV. I saw that her chest was heaving up and down in an angry way. No, I said, and I now felt stronger, as if my true self had finally emerged. So this was what was inside me all along. Reminds me a little bit of rules of the game. No, I won't, I screamed. She snapped off the TV, yanked me by the arm, and pulled me off the floor. She was frighteningly strong, half pulling, half carrying me towards the piano as I kicked the throw rugs under my feet. She had lifted me up on the hard bench. I was sobbing by now, looking at her bitterly. Her chest was heaving even more, and her mouth was open, smiling crazily, as if she were pleased that I was crying. You want me to be something I'm not. I'll never be the kind of daughter you want me to be. Only 2 kinds of daughters, she shouted in Chinese. Those who are obedient and those who follow their own mind. Only 1 kind of daughter can live in this house, obedient daughter. Then I wish I weren't your daughter. I wish you weren't my mother, I shouted. As I said these things, I got scared. It felt like worms and toads and slimy things crawling out of my chest. But it also felt good, that this awful side of me had surfaced at last. Too late to change this, my mother said shrilly. Now I really want you to pay attention to this next little part. And I can sense her anger rising to its breaking point. I wanted to see it spill over. In my mind, Jingmei's finally unleashed. She's finally told her mom exactly what she was thinking, and she got to the point where she still wasn't in charge. Her mother was still in charge, and she wanted to see her mother snap. And that's when I remembered the babies she had lost in China, the ones we never talked about. Then I wish I'd never been born, I shouted. I wish I were dead, like them. We all have something that we never talk about, something that goes unspoken. And I think that this really probably struck a nerve with her mom. Her daughter just brought up the dead babies that this mother had left in China. If you remember the beginning of the story, she lost everything, including 2 babies. And Jingmei finally got to the point where she brought that up. It was as if I had said magic words. Alakazam! Her face went blank, her mouth closed, her arms went slack, and she backed out of the room, stunned, as if she was blowing away like a small brown leaf, thin, brittle, and lifeless. It was not the only disappointment my mother felt in me. In the years that followed, I failed her many times, each time asserting my will, my right to fall short of expectations. I didn't get straight A's. I didn't become class president. I didn't get into Stanford. I dropped out of college. Asserting my will. Asserting her right to do this. As a teacher, I hate to say it, but you don't have to get straight A's. You don't have to become class president. You don't have to get into Stanford. You can drop out of college. These are all your choices. But in the long run, what's going to be most beneficial? Trying your hardest, get tough when the tough get going, or try to prove something to somebody that expects highly of you? Unlike my mother, I did not believe I could be anything I wanted to be. I could only be me. I think we'll probably have a cool discussion question here. And for all those years, we never talked about the disaster at the recital or my terrible declarations afterwards at the piano bench. Neither of us talked about it again, as if it were a betrayal that was now unspeakable. So I never found a way to ask her why she had hoped for something so large that failure was inevitable. And even worse, I never asked her about what frightened me the most. Why had she given up hope? For after our struggle at the piano, she never mentioned my playing again. The lesson stopped. The lid to the piano was closed, shutting out the dust, my misery, and her dreams. This next little section, I'm going to stop here. This next little section is a flash forward. This goes into the future. Now Jingmei is a little bit older. Her mom is much older. Jingmei is probably an adult now. Remember, we're writing from different perspectives here. We flip from Jingmei as an adult and then Jingmei as a child. I mean, she even told us that she didn't get straight A's. She didn't get into Stanford. She dropped out of college. We see this change between writing from a child and writing like an adult. This next section is going to be in the future. It's about a half a page left. Take a look at it. We'll discuss it in class on Monday, maybe Tuesday. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate those that have watched these videos and are taking notes along with us. I guarantee you that if you've done this, you've put in the effort, it's going to be worth your while. Thanks a lot.